can't lose. No, we can't lose.
Enjoy it while it lasts. Gambling gods, fickle bunch.
Oh, yeah.
So easily affected.
We have a shooter and a good one coming out for a new point. Get your bets down, ladies and gentlemen. He's a rolling point is 9, place 9. 9 a winner. Got a hot hand. Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen.
They bet on absolutely anything. Don't make them prove.
So Kelly, Don, and Billy Baxter were people who had that juju, and
You're tuned in to Gambling with Good JuJu.
Welcome in, everybody, to Gambling with Good JuJu, the show that reviews more authors than Granny's Book Club. Before we kick things off, do us a favor and head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button for us. If you're following along on a podcast platform, give us a follow there or rate the show. Maybe leave a review. We can be found on the socials at Good Juju Bets, and if you really like us, then head on over to goodjujubets.net, click on the merch shop, and show your support. On this week's episode, we're talking with Michael Kaplan, author of the book Advantage Players, which profiles elite advantage players from Phil Ivey to Mattress Mack, David Blaine to Don Johnson. He's written a number of books, and his other work has appeared in the likes of New York Times Magazine, Wired, Esquire, and GQ. He is currently a senior news features writer at the New York Post and gambling columnist for Cigar Aficionado. Michael, welcome into the show.
well, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Great.
I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. If you don't mind, before we dive into your most recent book, Advantage Players, I'd like to talk through some of your experiences prior to this book. Let's start here. Is it true that you wrote for Punk Fanzines in the New York area during the late 70s, early 80s?
I did. Well, yeah, growing up, I was a kid. I was obsessed with punk bands. I loved Patti Smith, the Ramones, Television, the Dead Boys. That was like my jam. I was like a kid. I would go to CBGB in Max's, Kansas City and see all these bands, much to my parents' chagrin. My mother would call there at like 3:30 in the morning and talk to the janitor and say, "Is it over yet?" Like, no, bands are still playing. And, they had to deal with it. But, so I was doing that, and I was writing for my town's newspaper, and I was reading fanzines, and there was this one called Teenage Depression that was in New Jersey, named for the Eddie and the Hot Rods album. And I got to write for them. I wrote a lot of stories. I interviewed the Ramones, I interviewed the Dead Boys. I interviewed the Damned when they first came to New York on their very first tour. It was really cool because I was like, I don't know, probably like 16 or something. I think I took my father's car. I remember I got a ticket. He was really annoyed. I wasn't supposed to be driving. And I went up to the Gramercy Park Hotel. I'd never been in a hotel like that before. And they were in there. It's possible that they had never been in a hotel like that before either. And I remember like Dave Vanian ordering a shrimp cocktail and, taking the cocktails. I was going, "Look at this blood." Like dripping it all over his face, which would be the thing Dave Vanian would do. And that was amazing. Like, I interviewed those guys. Then I went to see them at CBGB, and the opening band for them was the Dead Boys, who I had never seen before, and I loved them. And I go backstage, I go, "Can I interview you guys?" And they go, "Yeah, sure." So I'm backstage, I interviewed them, and then between like the early sets and the late sets, Patti Smith came on and played. It was like one of the greatest nights of my life. Honestly.
Wow.
I got to interview two amazing bands. I got to, do something pretty cool for a kid.
Yeah.
And Patti Smith and CBGB. I don't know what could have been better.
That's
Very
awesome.
Cool.
Did you write for that for a while? Like once you started your career or once you started as a journalist, did you move away from that?
I went to a college. It used to be called Glassboro State College. It's where Patti Smith went. She got kicked out for getting pregnant. And like one of my goals when I went there was to meet Patti Smith's sister, Kimberly, who lived like one town over in Mantua. And I got to meet Kimberly Smith right away. And like she'd come hang out in my dorm, we'd smoke weed, listen to reggae albums. It was the coolest. And I wrote from it was not like a top-notch college, but the place had an amazing magazine. And they had a good radio station, but I really gravitated to the magazine. I just wrote a ton of stuff. I did a lot of the music writing. I interviewed all these bands for them. And I was a runner-up for a Rolling Stone College Journalism Award. and I started writing for a bunch of music magazines like after I finished. I mean, basically, my life was writing for music magazines and sex magazines when I started out. Swank, Velvet, Hustler. Like, I wrote for everybody.
That's
and
fantastic.
Early on, I did a story for Hustler magazine about pathological gambling. I don't know what drove me to do that, but I pitched it and they gave me the assignment. I remember the illustration was a giant roulette wheel with people's cars and houses on it. We did these really slick airbrushed illustrations. But, that's how I started out. I mean, I wrote for like a lot of music publications. I wrote this thing, The Aquarian. I wrote this thing called Rockville. I wrote for Musician Magazine. I wrote for Rolling Stone a bit. I wrote for Spin. So I got to write for all these cool places. And I mean, it was amazing, to get to interview bands and like, I don't know, what could be more fun.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's quite a start. So you were into writing and you were pretty sure you were going to go down that path before you even went away to college?
No, I thought I was maybe going to be a DJ, but I was a terrible DJ. Like, I'd be playing punk rock records on a college radio station, and I wasn't great. But the college did have a great magazine. I mean, I got kind of lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to this friend of mine, friend of a friend who's from New Jersey, and she goes, "Oh, what college did you go to?" I go, "Oh, the shittiest state college in New Jersey." She goes, "Oh, Glassboro?" I go, "Yeah."
Well, you've managed to parlay it into quite a career.
I mean, on the college's magazine, this magazine called Venue, it was amazing. There were like really great kids on it, and I learned how to write. I mean, the advisor was this guy, Michael Desolitz, who was awesome. I'm still in touch with him. And he submitted me for the Rolling Stone College Journalism Award. I didn't even do it. I mean, then all of a sudden I get a letter in the mail. "Oh, you were a runner-up." I was like, how did that happen?
Wow.
And I called him and he goes, "Yeah, I submitted you." I was like, wow, that was incredibly kind. And, once I started writing for this place, I knew that was the only thing I really wanted to do.
Okay.
And then I got into writing about gambling. I mean, that was... then that turned out to be a really good beat for me. But like, it's not the only thing I write about.
Sure. Yeah.
But it turned out to be a great beat. And I mean, I really enjoy it. I enjoy that world a lot.
Did you consider your major breakthrough into writing about gambling when you covered Stu Ungar, or were you already pretty heavily into that scene? Yeah,
that was like the big story for me. I mean, what happened was I just had a conversation about this with another show. I bought this book, Fast Company by John Bradshaw, and I became like obsessed. I was like, I didn't know that people could write about gamblers like that. It's a really great book. It was like written in the 1970s. I bought it like in the latter part of the 80s, right before the stock market crash, right before Black Monday. I did a story on this guy, Austin Squatty, for GQ. I had written a couple stories for them, and they killed it. I mean, it was the weirdest thing. Because I go, why are you guys killing it? My editor goes, "Oh, my boss says you use the term, it is too much." I'm like, well, I could fix that. He goes, "No, we're killing it." I was like, okay, whatever. And then the weird thing is, this guy, Austin Squatty, he turned out to be like not a great guy. He got murdered. He was a criminal. Like, he was an arsonist. He did some pretty bad things.
That's quite a rap sheet.
About him. Like, a guy in Texas wrote a book about him, and he contacted me and he goes, "Oh, can I use some of your article that you wrote about Austin Squatty?" I'm like, well, yeah. I go, "How do you have it?" He goes, "Oh, it was in his files." And I can't believe I did this. I mean, I'm sure he convinced me, like, because I remember the story got killed. He was really upset. He goes, "Oh, I told all these people I was going to be in it. This makes me look really bad." And he probably said, "Can you send me the article?" And I sent it to him. And this guy then had it. And I said, "Oh, can you scan it and send it to me? I would like to see it." It was written in like, I don't know, a long time ago, like in the mid 80s.
Wow.
And I read it. I go, it really wasn't that bad. I actually, GQ might have known that he was a bad guy after they assigned it, and they decided they just didn't want to run it. I mean, that's because he did get murdered soon after I wrote the story about him, and I knew none of that. I wrote a pretty positive story about him.
Wow.
So, but I did get to see. Well, the great thing was, I went there. I went with this guy to the World Series of Poker. It was the year that Eric Seidel finished second to Johnny Chan.
Yeah.
So I knew Seidel a little bit because I went to the gambling club in the I'm spacing on the name of it. The gambling club inside the Gramercy Park Hotel. And I met him there, and I go, this guy's playing in the World Series of Poker. I couldn't believe it. And then he finished second. And I called the magazine in New York to see if they'd let me write about it. But they didn't want me to. But while I was there, I had no idea who Stu Ungar was. I was like watching a poker game, and I saw this kid with like, you know, big puffy hair. And he was like the youngest one there. He looked like a teenager. And he was like running the table. I mean, I remembered writing in my notes, this guy is the Mick Jagger of poker. You know, fortunately, he wound up as the Keith Richards of poker. But, you know, yeah, that. But the story I did on Stu was like a major, major breakthrough story for me.
Now, when you interviewed Stu, did you kind of have a sense that his time was not long on this earth?
It was a very weird situation. I mean, I got this magazine. I found out. I don't know. I kind of, at that point, it was like the late 90s. I kind of knew what was going on a little bit in the gambling world. I knew that he had won the World Series of Poker 2 times, and he won it the year before, and that I assumed he was going to try to win it again.
Yeah.
So I called the guy who ran the poker room at the Horseshoe, and I said, I've got an assignment to interview Stu Ungar. This magazine called Icon gave me the assignment to do it. And he goes, well, I don't know. I don't know if Stu's going to want to do it. I'm like, well, can you give me his phone number? He's like, yeah. He goes, I don't really give out people's numbers. I mean, I don't think he had Stu's number. And he goes, I go, well, can you ask him for me? He goes, yeah, I'm not comfortable doing that. I'm like, okay, well, what if I just show up? Will he talk to me? He goes, that's up to Stu. I go, well, he'll definitely be there, right? And he goes, it's unheard of for somebody to not defend their World Series of Poker title. I'm like, okay. So I get the magazine to send me, and I go, if it doesn't work out, I'll do a story about what it's like to be a professional poker player. And that was like pretty unusual then, so they were cool with that. And I go there, and he's like up in his room. Like, that was the year he didn't play. And that was the same year that was the year that Rounders came out. And the 2 guys who directed it were there. Edward Norton was there. I mean, it was a pretty cool scene. Harvey Weinstein was, he wasn't in the situation he later got in. He seemed like this really cool, big shot movie guy. I was like, wow, this is, Matt Damon was there. This was a really cool scene. And I've got to interview this guy. And, I talked to Billy Baxter, who put him in, and he was like, yeah, he's telling me stories about Stu. Everybody's telling me these great Stu stories. And I'm standing right at the seat where he's going to be sitting to play. And an announcement comes over the PA system. Stu Ungar will not be playing in the World Series of Poker main event. He's not feeling well. Everybody started laughing because they knew he was strung out on drugs.
Yeah.
So I was, wow, this is not good. So I call up to his room, and because he was staying at the Horseshoe, it was easy to get his room. I call up to his room, and I say, hey, I'm a writer from this magazine, Icon. I want to come interview you for a story. He goes, Icon? I never heard of that thing. I'm like, oh, it's a really cool magazine. I go, they got Johnny Depp on the cover. He goes, Brosco? They put Brosco on the cover? Well, if they put Brosco on the cover, they could put me on the cover. And I'm like, well, maybe, but you got to let me up. Because I look like shit. I haven't shaven. I'm like, yeah, I don't care about that. He's like, all right, fine. Come on up. And he gives me his room number. I go up. He looked terrible. He's like wearing a World Series of Poker jacket that's like 3 sizes too big. I look inside the door. I see like Pringles stacked up on like a bridge table, like as if they're poker chips. And he goes, I'm going to give you the best interview ever. He goes, I was mobbed up at 14. I was like the kid in A Bronx Tale. And he's just yelling and screaming in the hallway. This Chinese guy opens the door. He goes, hey, I'm trying to sleep. She goes, we're talking out here. And the guy goes back in the room. He goes, you call me tomorrow morning. You get a great interview. Fine. Well, he basically asked me if I had any Valium. I go, I don't. I go, but I can help you to get it. He goes, you have it? I go, no. He goes, what good are you? Slams down the phone. Then I must have called him 100 times. Just kept saying, call me back in 5 minutes. Call me back later. I'm here with a girl. Got a drug. It was like he never would see me.
Yeah.
Then he disappears. He's gone. And I was like, well, that's not good. And I figured I got a lot of like secondary stuff on him. And I did have stuff on what it's like to be a poker player. Then a few weeks later, I was in San Diego because I live in New York. I was in San Diego doing a story on these rugby players. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just fly to Vegas on my own money, check into a cheap hotel, and try to get this thing to happen. I was like, it really annoyed me. And I check into the Rio, which had just opened. It was pretty reasonable. And I go over to the Mirage, and Howard Lederer's wife, Susie, she wasn't his wife then, Susie Weiss was running the Mirage poker room. So I go, hey, I'm a writer from this magazine. I'm trying to find Stu Ungar. She goes, yeah, he's not here. She goes, I go, do you know anybody who could get me in touch with him? She goes, there's one guy who maybe can. And she gives me the guy's number. I call him, and he goes, well, I'll call Stu and see what he says. I go, well, look, you set this thing up. I'll come by. I'll bring a couple 6-packs of beer because you do not bring beer into my house. Like maybe this guy was Stu's sponsor or something. Like flipped out. But then the next day, Stu calls me. After there were no cell phones, he calls my room at the Rio, and he goes, I knew Mike Kaplan was going to find me. I knew you were going to come back here. I'm like, wow. I go, all right, let's do the interview. He's like, well, I got to go to the dentist. I got a tooth missing. I go, Stu, I don't care. I wasn't going to let him get away again. I go, let's just do it. And he's like, okay, fine. I'll meet you at Arizona Charlie's. And we go there. He loads up a plate at the buffet, and he gave me an amazing interview. And that was, have you ever seen it, the story?
I've seen the story. I haven't seen your particular article, but I have definitely consumed a decent amount of Stu Ungar content.
Okay. Boy, see, it's weird because I did a book called Aces and Kings, a book about poker players with this co-author, Brad Reagan, and the Stu story was in there, and it got excerpted by Card Player. So it's up on the Card Player website.
Oh.
But all of this backstory is not in there. And for this book, for the Advantage Players book, I was going to put the Stu story in there. I wrote a long introduction explaining this whole story because there's also other crazy stuff that went on. And I wrote a long introduction explaining all of that. And then, I don't know, the Stu thing didn't really fit in a book it just didn't really fit in with what the book is. So, but I write a column every week for Card Player, because I was doing stuff for Finixio, the guys who bought Card Player. Okay. And then they said, yeah, you should just do a column for the magazine Card Player. I'm like, okay. So I do a column every week in there, and I have a good relationship with them. And I thought I would give them that introductions. I've got to do it. I mean, I'm going to do that, and they'll have that. Then they could make the Stu story, which was in 2 parts. In fact, I can give them there's an updated version of it that's better than what they have. So hopefully in the next couple months, this whole thing will be up on Card Player's website.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah,
looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
So you had actually mentioned the Aces and Kings book you wrote. I want to get into that a little bit, but before I do, were you surprised by the meteoric rise in poker in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I was surprised because when I first went out to the World Series of Poker, it was to write about, I was there a few times. I was there to do a story on Austin Squatty. That was in the mid-'80s. Then I went out and did the story on Stu. That was in the '90s. And I did a story on Lonnie Binion, Ted Binion, the kid who got murdered. It was his father was Benny Binion. And he was the brother of Jack. And I did a story about that for Los Angeles Magazine. So those were the 3 times I was at the World Series of Poker. And I mean, I'm thinking that it was pre-Moneymaker when I went out to do the story on the Binion story, because that was definitely before Moneymaker, and it was a small event. I mean, it was maybe a couple hundred people there. It wasn't like a giant thing. There weren't a ton of media. It was awesome because you can go there and meet all these poker players, and a lot of them didn't really have big reasons to talk to reporters. They had those reasons after they all lined up with poker sites.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I mean, you had to just get them to want to talk to you. I mean, I interviewed a lot of them. So when poker blew up, my partner, Brad Reagan, my writing partner, and we got a call from Rolling Stone. They had a book imprint, and they wanted to do a poker book. So I was like, yeah, why don't we just do make it be New Yorker style profiles on poker players? And Brad was into that. Publisher was into it. And then we went out. It was the World Series. It might have been the one when Raymer won. And we went out and we basically, we stayed at the Las Vegas Club, which is now Circa. And it was not fancy at all. I mean, it was like, I think we paid like $30 a night for our rooms. And we got, the guy gave us writing tables. It was great, though. He gave us refrigerators and writing tables. And It was awesome. I had no problem staying there. Because we would basically do a trial from the Las Vegas Club to the Horseshoe to the Golden Nugget, where a lot of the cash games would get played. And we were just trying to get everybody we can get to talk to us. And, you know, we got a lot of the players. And it was a really cool experience. It was a great time to be doing it, because it was just as poker was blowing up. It was right after Moneymaker won, the main event. And, you know, that's when, I remembered the guys from Full Tilt, like Eric Seidel and Lederer, Ferguson. They were all getting ready to start Full Tilt. I mean, it was pretty interesting. They either just started it or were getting ready to start it. And the funny thing is, I interviewed Chris Ferguson for Wired magazine because, you know, he was like this math genius and this computer genius who was starting an online, you know, gambling company. And I remember I went to their offices in West LA to interview him for Wired. And I'm sure that was before we did the Aces and Kings book, because I remember I put that in there. Like Wired bought it, and they sat on. They could never figure out what to do with them. They never ran it. Then me, and I said to my editor, I said, "Oh, can I put it in this book?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So that was, you know, got to run in there. Like that was a really interesting time, because that's when poker was really on the cusp. I mean, it had semi blown up, but it didn't gigantically blow up.
Now, you covered a number of poker personalities in your book. You've already mentioned some of them in the book Aces and Kings. For the audience's reference, it included names such as Doyle Brunson, Amarillo Slim, Chris Moneymaker, Howard Lederer, Chris Ferguson, Daniel Negreanu, previously mentioned Stu Ungar. Which of these characters you covered in the book stood out as particularly interesting to you?
Doyle was a bit of a challenge because I had interviewed Devilfish prior to doing the book. I went and met with him at the Aviation Club in Paris. He was hanging out there and playing. I went there and interviewed him for Cigar Aficionado. And we're talking, and he's telling me about a hand that, you know, Doyle sucked out on him. To me, he goes, I said to him, "Doyle, next time you write one of your books, make sure it's in paperback so I can wipe my ass with it." I'm like, wow. I go, "I can use that?" He's like, "Yeah, I said it. You can use it." I'm like, okay.
Oh my God.
I put it in the article, you know, for Cigar Aficionado. And it was, you know, it was a pull quote because it was a great quote. And then I get a call from Devilfish. He goes, "You got to take that out of the magazine." I'm like, "Well, it's too late. The magazine's printed." He goes, "Well, I've got a big problem with this." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I was supposed to play Heads Up with Doyle on the BBC. And because this was like during the World Series was, it's either starting or it was about to start. There were like other tournaments going on. There was a big tournament at the Bellagio. And he goes, "I was supposed to do that, and he won't do it because of what you put in the article." I'm like, "Well, I asked you multiple times if I could put it in." He goes, "I didn't know it would be the title of the article." I go, "Well, title." But I get why Doyle didn't love it. And so then I was out. I go, "Well, look, I'm going to be out in Vegas interview Lyle Berman in like a week, and we'll figure it out. Like, you know, don't worry, right?" So I go out, and there's a big tournament going on at the Bellagio, and I'm sort of sitting in the audience watching that. And then I talk to Lyle Berman, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you know, we're playing the big game over at Sam's Town." He goes, "You just come over and interview me there." I'm like, "Okay." So I go over there, and it's the big game. It's like, you know, in this dumpy casino. But I think the idea was Bobby Baldwin played in it, and he wanted to play in a place that was neutral. Like, he didn't really want to play in one of the casinos that he was involved in running. So I go over there. It's like Bobby Baldwin, Chip Reese, Doyle Brunson, Barry Greenstein. There's like all the biggest poker players in the world are sitting at that table, right? And Lyle Berman steps back. He puts his arm around me, and he goes, "This is Michael Kaplan from Cigar Aficionado. He's about to interview me." Doyle looks up. He goes, "I got a big problem with your magazine." I'm like, "Oh yeah, Devilfish thing." And then everybody just starts needling him. They go, "Yeah, that wasn't right. That wasn't right." They're just trying to get him worked up. You know, they're all needling him about it, like making like they feel bad for him, but, you know, they're sticking it in his mind. And Lyle Berman is like, "Well, I guess we're going to just go do the interview." Didn't really go the way he hoped it would go. And we walk off to like this kind of corner room. and we're talking. I go, look, I don't want Doyle Brunson to hate me. I go, what am I supposed to do? And he goes, look, you got to print a retraction that's as large as that blurb. I'm like, well, they're not going to do that. They're not going to print a retraction at all. He goes, all right, look, you just have to go over to him and apologize. Just tell him you're sorry. I'm like, okay. So these guys are playing, and like I go over to Brunson. I'm like down on one knee, and I'm like, oh, Mr. Brunson, I'm really sorry about that article. I understand why you're upset. Nothing like that will ever happen again with me. And he looks and goes, you didn't write the article, did you? I'm like, yeah, I did write it. And he goes, I got a big problem with you and with the magazine. He's like, mad again. And I'm like, what am I going to do, right? So I leave. And then we're working on the book, and he didn't want to talk to us because he goes, I don't want to talk to anything that Michael Kaplan's involved with. I mean, in a weird way, it's kind of an honor to be on Doyle Brunson's radar, even to somebody he doesn't like.
Absolutely.
But I mean, honored for the book. So it was annoying. And I mean, I had multiple people going up to him and saying, oh, Kaplan's a good guy, cut him a break. He goes, no, I'm not talking to Kaplan. Finally, my partner, Brad, was from Texas. He was able to go up to Doyle and kind of engage with him. And he got a good interview. And, that was a chapter in the book. And then the funny thing, though, is once online poker started and Doyle Brunson had his own site, he was totally willing. First of all, he came off pretty well in the book, so maybe it was like bygones at that point. But he definitely was a great guy to me. Like if I wanted to interview him because I was writing a lot for this British magazine called Poker Player. It was like published by Dennis Publishing, Felix Dennis, the guy that owned Maxim. And it was a really cool magazine. They tried to be kind of like the Maxim of poker. Okay. And I did a lot. I interviewed Doyle Brunson multiple times for them, and he was totally cool about talking to me because he was trying to promote his website. Right. That poker. The more he talked about it, the more action it got, and the more money he made. And once it all shut down, remember I called him about after Chip Reese died. He said, okay, look, I'm going to talk to you about this, but I'm really done talking to the media after this conversation. And I go, why? He goes, well, I don't gain anything from it anymore. I was like, okay. And it was fair enough. I mean, he played the piano for me in his house. He was a really good piano player. He was sweet. I mean, I actually thought he was a really nice guy, Doyle. He was a really good guy. So
it sounds like you went from being hated by him to almost like his friend.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally.
Good work.
By the end, he liked me. I mean, listen, he liked me well enough to have me in his house, introduce me to his wife, to play the piano for me. When I would see him, he'd say hello to me. So I don't know. I think, and maybe he also realized that, like, I didn't make the comment. Devilfish made the comment.
Right.
So maybe by then he was less than, or maybe he held it against Devilfish, not against me at a certain point. So yeah, it worked out.
Well, that's awesome. I actually, Aces and Kings, that's one of the books that are now on my to-read list.
Yeah, fantastic. Summer reading. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. You can probably buy it for about $2 on Amazon. It's long out of print, very cheap to buy. So it will not cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
You can price average between that and Advantage Players.
There you go.
Gotcha. Now you've written quite a few books, so I do have to ask this question. What is the best time to get a restaurant comp from a casino?
Good question. Probably, obviously it would be after you lost a bundle. I would say that. I'd say after you've dropped the bundle. That's when they will be likeliest to give you a comp.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Because I played on a pretty big card counting team for a while. So until they realized I was a card counter, they gave me a lot of comps.
Yeah.
Then once they realized, they didn't really even want you playing there. Never mind giving comps to come in.
Were you on a team separate from the MIT team, or were you associated with
it was not the MIT team. This was a team run by a guy named Don Schlesinger. Really, really bright Wall Street guy. And he was a big time card counter, and he put together a team. It lasted a couple of years, but I think that these things tend to have short lifespans. They unravel. Things start to go south, and people, don't always do what they're supposed to do. And it's tough, I think, to keep these teams going unless it's like you and two people you're really close with, and you both all have your own money in it. And that's a little bit different. But these teams, it was almost a little bit of a lifestyle team. So, you know what I mean? We all stayed in fancy casinos, and we got a lot of comps. And I think sometimes people were like loath to play correctly and risk losing the comps.
Well, we interviewed Andy Block, who said he was arrested 4 times for counting cards in blackjack. Did you ever come close to any of that?
Never got arrested. I mean, I got backed off loads of times.
Sure.
I never got close to being arrested, never got back roomed. By the time I was doing it, I think the casinos realized that if they back room you for card counting or if they arrest you, they're going to have a lawsuit on their hands.
Right.
So they would just tell you to leave. They would just tell you can't. I mean, it would be always the same shtick. I mean, they would say, oh, we appreciate your business, but your action's a little strong for us.
Yeah.
Any game at the casino, but you can't play blackjack.
Yeah.
I'm like, why not? Corporate decision. And basically like, all right, get the hell out.
Get out.
Come back in a couple months.
Right. Okay. So are you a gambler in general?
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, like, random gambling is like not that interesting to me.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy named Nick Rainey taught me how to beat the sit and goes on full tilt. I think they were 90-man sit and goes. And this would have been like while full tilt was going on, like I guess before everything got shut down.
Yeah.
And I had very little. I mean, I'd played a little bit of online poker. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And a couple of people tried to show me how to do stuff. And I don't know. I just didn't know what I was doing. And it was frustrating. Like, it wasn't fun to me to just get, like, random gambling was not fun. But when Nick taught me how to beat these sit and goes, I loved it. I mean, I'd like spark up 8 screens. My wife and kids would be asleep, and I play through the 8. Unless I busted out super quickly, then I would rebuy into something. But I would basically just play, until all 8 were gone, and hope that I finished in the money or made a final table. Which I guess you had to make a final table to finish in the money in a 90-man. It was amazing because really, and I didn't make like people would say to me, "Oh, how much money you make?" And I'd be like, "I don't know, made a couple grand." They go, "That's it?" I'm like, "Well, how much do you make playing golf?" Well, money. I'm like, "Well, this is like a hobby for me. I'm not really trying because you got to put in so much volume. I mean, my ROI was like 30%, but the volume was so low. I mean, I really couldn't, you know what I mean? And I was like playing, I think the highest ones I played were $20-something entries. So I wasn't playing super high. I mean, but it was, all I wanted to do was beat poker. So I enjoyed doing that. I mean, if I like go to Vegas, I mean, Aria has those poker tournaments that are pretty good structure, like $125 or something. And they definitely are bad players. And if I have the time, I'll play in those. I'll go to. There's a particular casino downtown where I like to go card count. I'll go down there with my friend Heidi Fleiss, who's in the book. She was the famous Hollywood madam in the 1990s. Girls for Charlie Sheen and stuff. And I'll go down there with her. We'll play. She loved life. I got backed off, and she was thrilled. She goes, "Oh my God, you're the biggest gangster in this whole casino."
Oh.
Like, whoa, okay. She was very happy, and then we left. But yeah, she loved it, and I was able to go. You could always go back. So like, I mean, I like the idea of like random gambling is not appealing to me. That's why this whole advantage player world is really interesting to me.
Okay.
It sounds like we're not going to catch you edge sorting in the game of baccarat.
I wish I could. I mean, Kelly showed me how to do it. I mean, if you look closely, if you hold the cards 2 inches from your face and you look, you can see how she does it.
Yeah.
But I mean, she was ridiculously good, and I don't think you could do it anymore at baccarat. I mean, I don't think any casinos are turning cards for people. But listen, if you find single deck blackjack games, there was a guy, I don't want to say his name, who, like, what guys would do is, because in the single deck games, you touch the cards. And they would be able to spin the cards like almost like a magic trick. It would be imperceptible to you. And they would set up the deck just like Kelly did. And they would spin the cards, and they would be blackjack. I think they called it playing the turn. But it was the same thing, like the aces and tens. I don't know, maybe they would make all the short edges, face away, toward them. And, you could still, I guess if you could find a single deck game using the right cards, you could still do it. But I think it's probably not that easy to find those games. But I wish I could edge sort. I mean, there's a guy in the book named James Grosjean, who's kind of like the king of these advantage players. And I wrote about him in the New York Times Magazine. I'd written about him in Cigar Aficionado. I wrote about him in Wired, so I knew him pretty well. And he called me. The stories were all written. Wasn't writing anything. He goes, "You want to come play with me?" Because he needed people to be what they call a big player to do the betting. And he would signal them. And it was craps with playing cards, a game in Oklahoma. And I flew out there and I played with him and his crew. And I made good money. And it was so much fun. That was a really cool experience that I got to do that.
We're going to have to learn more about craps with playing cards at some point.
Yeah, cards, craps.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, that's where it's not legal to use dice, right? They use cards.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Although I think it is legal now in Oklahoma to use dice. But at that point, a guy would throw a giant Mylar dice, and they would deal out 12 cards, 6 with red backs, 6 with blue backs. And like, let's say the die landed on 3. They would turn over the third card. If that was a red card, they would now turn over the blue card. So Grosjean then would see those 2 cards, and when they swept everything up, they put those on the bottom, and he would see, the 12th card as well. So he saw 3 of the cards, and if you understand how shuffling machines work, and they're putting in 12 cards, you can do pretty well.
Wow.
I like where we're headed.
Because I think when I wrote it, because I went with him when I wrote it for the New York Times Magazine. I went with him to a different casino in Oklahoma where he was doing this play. And amazingly, he let me come along and watch, and it was amazing. And I mean, the line I use in there is that, yeah, these shuffling machines seem randomized, but they're only as random as the program allows them to be. So it was pretty interesting, and it was great. I mean, playing with him, watching him play. I watched him do a whole carding game. I lost him. I knew the card. He was telling me the dealer's cards, and he was telling the other people. And I still lost money, which was annoying. But you don't always win, even when you know what the dealer has. Right. I was making every right play because he was telling me what to do. So it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, random gambling though has never done that much for me. So I was glad I learned how to card count. I was glad I learned how to beat certain types of poker games. I made it fun.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Will you just do random gambling?
I'd say it's a part of the show that we're trying to take ourselves from more random gambling to less random gambling. We've been, picking up a little on the AP slots, but we don't get into the things that would be most likely to get us backed off at a casino.
Yeah. I get that. Well, the slots is great. I mean, doing the AP slots is great.
Yeah.
I mean,
so we'll try to play as efficiently as possible at a blackjack table without trying to count cards.
Yeah.
Right.
We want to make sure we understand the games and know how to minimize our damage as best we can.
Right.
Yeah. And, we did quite well sports betting for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Sports betting, that's tough to beat.
Yeah, we had a significant edge for a while. We're working on that, actually. Yeah. Now that you mentioned it.
We were longtime top-down bettors. Just taking advantage of soft books relative to sharper books.
Yeah.
But in recent times, we've gotten tired and backed off, if you will, from the square books, and so we're looking into new ways to exploit that. Our motto's kind of been: we make money sports gambling so we can spend it in the casino.
That's cool. I like that. Well, Don Johnson, who's in the book, I mean, he's famous for his blackjack play, but how he really makes his money is through horse racing. I mean, he has a great computer model for beating racing.
Oh, interesting.
He does extremely well. And he's got computer scientists working for him, and they do really, really well.
Wow.
Yeah. I've always said that Tim Mara should be in the Gambling Hall of Fame. Anyone who can parlay horse betting into owning the New York Giants is quite the gambit.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree with that.
All right. Let's
tell Derek Stevens, because I think isn't he starting some kind of sports betting Hall of Fame?
Yeah, well, we go out every year to an annual sports betting conference called Bet Bash.
Bet Bash.
Yeah, it's hosted at
Spanky.
It's hosted out at
cool.
Circa.
He's an awesome guy, Spanky. I like him.
Yeah. We had him on the show last summer, and I think he's gonna hopefully, as long as his trip settled down, he's gonna be joining us in a couple weeks here again.
But they have
tell him I said hello. I like him a lot. He's a really, really cool, really smart guy.
He's pretty charismatic.
But Derek's a good guy. He's always around, and they do the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame induction while we're out there. So it's fun, a little black tie event for us. all us weird, smelly dudes to get dressed up.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into your most recent book, Advantage Players.
Okay.
Before we get into the specifics, do you mind providing a brief overview of the book for our audience?
Yeah. I mean, basically, it started out being about people who beat casino games. That's what it was originally going to be. Because I've written a lot about it, and the publisher, Anthony Curtis, that we're going to just do a collection of stories, of gambling stories. And I don't know, it seemed kind of boring, and it's wound up being a lot more work, but I'm glad I did it. And we were talking, and I was like, you know what? It's not like gamblers are the only advantage players. There are a lot of advantage players in life. I mean, like the lawyer David Chesnoff is in there. I mean, he got Mike Tyson off. David Blaine is in. I mean, that guy's an advantage player. The Safdie brothers, the movie directors, like the guys who did Uncut Gems. I mean, their advantage play is they load their movies up with non-professional actors. Like, the woman who played, spacing on her name, but who played Sandler's, mistress.
Yeah.
But she's a person who was like hanging around New York, and I guess Josh knew her, and they, they cast her. I mean, I think the way Benny put it is rather than casting actors and teaching them how to be those characters, they would rather cast the characters and teach them how to act. They'd rather take people who've been doing this their whole life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And put them in the movies. And it's really, really hard. I interviewed Ron Shelton once, and because he's done stuff with a lot of professional athletes, like in Tin Cup, did a baseball movie, and like he's worked with a lot of professional athletes, and he said it's really, really hard to get non-actors to act convincingly, because it looks easy because these actors work really hard at being able to do it.
Yeah, right.
And he goes, you should see the blooper reels for our movies. But the Safdie brothers, they do it, and I mean their movies have this verisimilitude that most movies don't have because they do that. And there's a financial dominatrix in it. Heidi Fleiss is in it. So these guys, I mean, I got diagnosed with a really brutal form of cancer. And the doctors who came up with my treatment, which does not use chemotherapy, and me for finding those doctors when I had a guy who wanted to give me brutal chemo, it's like this particular cancer affects 1 out of 200,000 people. Wow. It's like betting $100 and winning 20 million. And I'm like, wow, I hit the jackpot. My prize was an incurable cancer. Like, those guys are mega advantage players in my mind and for me. But then there are all the gamblers. I mean, John Chang, who played on the MIT team and inspired the role of Kevin Spacey's character in 21. The woman they call Miss Brown, Gina, who, she's done an awful lot of advantage plays. As a woman, there's not a lot of women doing this and really getting away with it. And, it's interesting. Billy Baxter, I mean, that guy's a mega advantage player. He's like a millionaire before he was 21, never went broke, which not every poker player could say. And he was an amazing guy. And I mean, it was interesting because when I interviewed him, I met him he was playing at this casino in Southern California. And it was a casino where there was only high stakes poker. I think it was called the Palomino. And there's no swimming pool, no fancy restaurant, no rooms. He was staying in a pretty nice hotel, maybe 30 minutes away. And I met him there and we drove down. And I mean, he was losing, but he's made so much money gambling. I mean, he could take losing a little bit too. And I mean, he was having a good time, and it was interesting. I mean, but yeah, I mean, the gambling advantage players are amazing, but I think the people who are advantage players outside of gambling kind of blow my mind, because they don't even know I guess they know they're doing something right, but they wouldn't sit down and articulate, oh, I'm an AP, I'm an advantage player. I figure out how to do. But that's the case for all of them. And the sort of subtext of the book is that everybody has some kind of an advantage player in them. Like, you don't need to bring $100,000 into a casino and understand how to edge sort or hole card or card count or, find soft games, or, find good sports betting opportunities. You could do it in whatever your domain is. You could be an advantage player. And that's what I hope people take away from it, that they could find their own advantage player inside them.
Do you think there's a unifying characteristic, like the way they're born or share a certain trait between all these folks?
Really, really hard work, really thinking about a way to do a thing that other people couldn't do. And it was interesting. Like, I did the New York Post, where I have, like, my kind of day job. I'm a senior features writer there. They have a video. They have a pretty robust YouTube page, and they did a video. When the book came out, they did a video about me and the cancer and the book, like, combined. Because the weird thing is, I had stage 4 cancer. I'm not trying to harp on this because I know it's a bummer to people.
No.
But I had stage 4 cancer. My bone marrow was 40% cancer, and these as of last year, and I just found out this year, there's 0 cancer evident in my blood.
Wow.
And I never got chemo. I never got brutal radiation. I mean, I found the right doctors who have a treatment that uses, I get an infusion every 8 weeks. I take 6 pills a day that beats down the cancer. And luckily, they came up with it. But the guy who really came up with it is an Australian doctor, an Australian oncologist. And for the Post, I interviewed I interviewed the Australian guy, I interviewed this guy in Houston who first treated me, and I interviewed my current doctor in New York at Weill Cornell Medical Center. But when I was talking to the Australian guy, he had, like, the best definition of being an advantage player. Because I said to him, they wanted me to say, I mean, this was the producer's question, but I was doing the interviewing. And so they said, ask him what it takes to be an advantage player in life. And he said, and this is it. He says, it's seeing obstacles and not letting those obstacles stop you, figuring out ways around every obstacle. And that's what all of the people in this book have in common. And people say to them, oh, you're an idiot. You can't do this. This is a bad idea. And they know somehow that it's not a bad idea. They get it. And they understand something about it. And they are advantage players. I mean, like, you don't have to gamble to be an advantage player. I mean, Phil Ivey's a mega advantage player. Obviously at poker, he's the greatest poker player in the world, arguably. And he did a great play with Kelly. I mean, that was like an amazing advantage play. And, when he got in trouble for that, he said, I'm paraphrasing, but, he basically said something on 60 Minutes along the lines of, it's my job to figure out how to beat casinos. And there was a casino security guy who said, Bill Ivey is sharp. I don't even want to play slot machines in my casino. And he's, there are sharp ways to play slot machines. So, and what amazes me too about the people in gambling, I mean, I actually wrote about this recently, is this entrepreneurial bent that these guys have, that they're going to sit down and figure out a way to win. I mean, because look, they're putting up their own money. I mean, it's not like I guess sometimes they have investors, they have backers, but for the most part, it's their money.
Right.
And they've got to do it right. And they've got to know, if I lose, I still have an advantage. I can't stop playing. And I have so much high regard for all these people in the book, gamblers, the non-gamblers, because they're people that they have in common this way of not letting obstacles stop them, not letting other people's opinions stop them, not letting anything get in their way, and being willing to sit down and take something apart and figure it out. And I think when you're an advantage player in gambling or in life, your whole life gets better. Like, you figure out how to do things in the best possible way. You know what I mean? It's cool.
Yes.
And I think the world would be better if there were more advantage players in the world, whether it's in the casinos or, at their jobs.
Yeah.
I think everybody would be better off.
So we mentioned this in speaking to the Phil Ivey baccarat scheme with Kelly's son. First of all, can you explain what edge sorting is? We touched on it earlier, but what exactly is edge sorting?
Yeah. So the cards and it might be different now, but certainly at that point, there were certain cards being used in casinos where they allowed, I might be wrong about this number, I think it was like 1/16 of an inch differential from one side to the other, or the top to the bottom. And if you can train your eyes to spot that difference, That's the first thing you have to do. Second thing you have to do is they were playing mini baccarat, and Kelly figured this out. She got Ivey involved after she was already successful, and she was not. It was difficult for her to get down anywhere, and Ivey was able to get down. And so she came up with this idea that she would get a Mandarin-speaking dealer, and like, this is not cheating at all. This is total legal. This is total advantage play. Not marking cards. Not like, if it was illegal, they would both be in jail right now.
Yeah, right.
It's 100% legal, and you're entitled to do things that the casino doesn't like. I mean, they're doing things players don't like. Casino pays 6 to 5 at blackjack. Players don't like that. Right. Casinos do it anyway, and that gives them a giant advantage that most players don't understand. So she would play mini baccarat. She would ask for a dealer who spoke. I think Mandarin.
And why was that important? Do you know?
Because I think that she was able then to communicate. First of all, her English is not great, so I think she wanted somebody that she can communicate with.
Okay.
Yeah. And she'll get a Mandarin-speaking dealer, or Cantonese. It was either Mandarin or Cantonese, but she'll get a speaker that spoke one of those dialects, and she would say to them, "Oh, can we play Macau style?" And they go, "What's Macau style?" And it would be, at the beginning at least, it would be to deal out all 4 cards at once. And, that doesn't seem like much of an advantage. And they would deal out all 4 cards, and, she would be with her crew, and they'd be betting big money. And then she would say, "Oh, can you suck the card for good luck?" Like, when you play poker, how you suck the card when you turn it up super slow. And then it was a 7, 8, or 9. She would make sure that let's say, I'm going to make this up, but let's say the short edge is facing away from the dealer. Those are the key cards in baccarat. So in the course of playing to set it up, they have no advantage, and they're losing money just like anybody else, is playing at a disadvantage at baccarat, and they're playing for pretty high stakes. But then when it's all set up now, and especially if they will deal out all 4 cards and, play quote unquote Macau style, you can see all 4 cards, and now where the 7s, 8s, and 9s are, it's a giant advantage, obviously.
Yeah.
And she would get the casinos to do that. And the casinos did it because they didn't want to turn her off, because she was there to play for a lot of money. So she was after something that seemed kind of benign, and they would do it. And then later, they weren't getting all 4 cards dealt, but she would just see one card as it was like on the edge of the shoe, and she would see if it was a short trim or a long trim. And then she would know that there was at least one 7, 8, or 9, or not a 7, 8, or 9. And they could figure out if they want to play dealer or banker.
Wow.
Or if they wanted to, if they were going to get dealt a good hand, And I guess it wouldn't be that you want to play dealer or bank, but you would know if that first card is going to help you or not help you.
Yeah.
And they were very successful.
Yeah.
And, the casinos were very, in my opinion, were very poor sports about it. I mean, these guys, I don't think Kelly and Phil did anything wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, the casinos agreed to do everything. The casinos could have said, "Yeah, we're not turning cards for you." They could have said, "Yeah, we're not going to suck the cards. We're not going to..." All they had to do is say, "We're not turning cards," and that would be the end of it. But then they would have packed up and left, and somebody said, "Well, these people deposited all this money. Why aren't they playing?"
Yeah.
They're like, "Well, I didn't want to turn the cards."
Right.
And they'd be like, "Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, what does that matter if you turn the cards or don't turn?" Somebody would have said that's silly to lose these large gambles.
Whales. Yeah.
So both in the United Kingdom and the U.S., courts ruled against them in lawsuits related to this, right?
Well,
how does that even come to be?
Yeah. Oh, how did it even happen?
How do they reach that judgment based on what they were doing?
You know what? They were like technicalities that they weren't like playing with. I mean, this may not be exactly accurate, but I think the gist of it is that they weren't playing within the spirit of the game, basically. And it is ridiculous. So the spirit of the game is what? You lose?
Right. You lose, you get your free drinks and rooms, and you go home.
It feels like everything related to gambling's this way anymore, where you're expected to only lose, and if you win, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. they did nothing wrong. These guys, like Phil and Kelly, I mean, I think my opinion is they got a raw deal. And you know what's funny? When I wrote the New York Times story, I talked to the guy who's the head of, I don't know if security is exactly the right word, but certainly game security at one of the MGM casinos. And he said, advantage play is not illegal, but I view that as preventable loss. If I see people doing it, I stop them from doing it. But we pay them their money and we don't let them do it, or we change our procedure.
Yeah.
So we don't listen. All they had to do was wash the cards after every shoe. But they wouldn't do that because then that slows everything down. They don't want to lose the hands.
Right.
I'm think.
They want you to keep losing money until they realize you're winning.
Yeah. Do you think Phil Ivey can go into a casino anymore?
Oh, I think he can go into casinos whenever he wants. I don't think he has any problem. I mean, I haven't been with him in a casino. I was with him when I was doing I did a story on him for Playboy in like 2012. Casinos were fine with him. I don't think they would let him sit and play with Kelly's son and turn cards for him.
Yeah.
But I don't think the casinos had any problem with Phil at all.
Okay.
I think he's fine. And, I don't think he would be able to sit down with Kelly.
Yeah.
The play they were doing, that they probably can too.
Yeah.
But, he's an upstanding guy. He's a good guy. I don't think it was any big deal at all.
Now, there are a lot of interesting stories in the book, but were there any that were stood out to you either on a personal level or just that you found most interesting?
I really liked because he's this guy. I mean, he's famous for for beating the casinos at Blackjack.
Right.
That's the thing. He's the most famous. He went on this, and he had Grosjean and one of Grosjean and a partner of Grosjean's like figuring out stuff, and they would be like running the games, and Don would be there playing, and he'd be getting sick. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Again, none of which is illegal. It's all completely legal, but casinos don't like it. But they're entitled to not like it, and you're entitled to do it, And I was fascinated by him because he was a guy who grew up in a horse racing family, and he worked at a racetrack. I mean, he was like a racetrack executive, and he was meeting with guys like Bill Benter and Alan Woods, people like them who were doing these horse racing advantage plays, using computer models to beat racing. But the tracks don't mind that because that horse racing is
pari-mutuel. Yeah.
The track has no interest in who wins. Some tracks don't love it because if you're doing this, that means their regular gamblers are winning less.
Yeah.
And it becomes less enjoyable for them. But they also welcome the liquidity.
Sure.
And when he was a racetrack executive, he definitely welcomed the liquidity. And he saw what these guys were doing, and he was like, wow, I'm smart also. I could probably do this as well. And he went out and he hired computer scientists from University of Penn, and he got an office, and it takes time to get it to work. I mean, this is not trivial, doing one of these computer models to beat horse racing. Right. And I don't know that he went broke, but he definitely lost a lot of money getting it going.
Yeah.
And he believed in it, and he knew he needed the right guys, and he needed the right system and the right setup. And I remember the wording, but he needed people who understood certain things that went beyond just regular math. They had to understand a lot of math. But there were things for this that were extremely specific. And once he found them and he was doing it, he did great. And he was then, he got that going. And that's great. I mean, that's pretty impressive. You know what I mean? To be able to leave your job, make lots of money beating racetracks around the world.
Yeah.
And you can walk into the racetrack and you're welcome there because, again, you're bringing them a lot of liquidity. So they're not losing money to you.
Yeah.
So he was doing great with that. And then his story to me was he was at, I think, a Washington football game, and he was up in a VIP box, and there was a casino guy, and he heard the casino guy from Atlantic City making a pitch to a gambler there, saying, well, if you come in and you put X amount of dollars on deposit, we'll give you these terms, we'll give you those terms, we'll do this for you. And he said he was already messing around with card counting because he thought that being a kind of, even a break-even gambler in the casino he would get comps, and it looked good for him to bring his, like the guys that ran the racetracks to casinos, and they go in there, they get comped everything, and it looks good and it's fun. It's more fun to go in a casino and get comped than it is to have a guy have to reach for his credit card and pay for you, and you're like, oh, do you want me to give you some money? But it's all comped. I mean, you're like, oh, this is awesome. So he saw a benefit of that, and when he heard the deal that the casinos were giving out in Atlantic City, he was like, wow, I'm playing at an advantage with like rebates and, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. And money to walk in and great rules. And he started winning a lot of money. Like I guess he was card counting, but then he brought in other people to do stuff. Like he had people that were able to hold card for him and shuffle track. And they would go to the nightclubs and he'd bring a bunch of girls back to the table and give them each $1,000 and say, when we tell you to play, you play, and when we tell you to stop playing, you stop playing, and you can keep whatever you win. It was, when the count got bad, they would start eating cards, so he never had to vary his bet. And the ingenious thing is, one frustrating thing of card counting is, you sit down and you make your minimum bet, and you start winning, because all the big cards are coming out, and at that point, you're not going to raise your bet, because now the odds are against you, but you're losing out on these good hands.
Yeah.
So he was never really varying his bets. Like he would start out, let's say, betting, I don't know, $20K a hand. And when the count deteriorated to a certain point, he would get these girls to sit down and start playing, and they would start eating cards for him until it got good again. So he never had to vary his bets. But the ingenious thing was he benefited from all the good cards that drove the count down, which when you're card counting, you don't normally get to do. And the other thing I loved about him was he understood that you don't always win, even when you're doing it, because they were playing at a giant advantage. When he was with Grosjean and the other guy, they were doing really, really well. But Grosjean had this great line. He goes, Don's got a stomach of steel. He'll lose $1 million, and his first question will be, where's the restaurant? Where's the steakhouse? And it's like, okay, that happens. And, you have to be willing to roll with it, which is great, not being, a sore loser, and understanding that, you don't always get to win, but if you do it right, you will win in the long run, which I think, I was talking to Alec Torelli, the poker player, and we had this discussion about, you don't always get to win, when you play, especially you're playing in big tournaments like the World Series, you do your best, and if you always do what you're supposed to do and you're good, in the end, you're gonna be ahead, you're gonna win. But you just don't get to always win. I think Billy Baxter had this great line when he lost money when I was with him. He goes, if you won all the time, something would be wrong. That's the attitude you have to have if you really want to be a gambler. If you're playing, I remember talking to sports bettors. If you're a sports bettor and you win like 56% of the time, you're doing extremely well, right? But that still means you've lost 44% of the time. You're still losing, like more than most people could tolerate losing.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting. You know? Obviously you're playing for giant amounts of money. If you're making a lot of money, that small edge that you get. But I think gambling is all about these small edges. Even an edge of like 12 or 13%. It's a big edge, but it's not infallible. You still do lose sometimes.
Right.
Have you been tracking the recent legislation capping losses at 90% of winnings?
It sucks. I don't like it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think you're talking about that was part of that big, beautiful bill, or whatever it was called. Yeah. And again, I think I wrote about this for Card Player because I said, these guys are the most American people in the world, gamblers. Yeah. They're entrepreneurs. They're taking their shots. They're figuring out how to do something. They're putting their money on the line, and they're willing to lose. Like they're willing to not always win. They're not cheaters. They're just doing it as well as they could possibly do. They're finding their edges, and to make it so that you can't deduct all of your loss. You can't deduct all of your. You can deduct 90% of your losses, right? Yeah. It's like you're paying 10% VIG.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. And I think people don't get it, what that 10% means. That is your advantage.
That's everything. We live off of 3 percentages.
10% advantage, you're doing great.
Yeah.
playing it, the difference between playing at a 10% advantage and playing at a, let's say, I don't know, if you're sports betting, playing at, a 2%, well, I mean, you got to do better than 10% if you're sports betting. But,
No, we live in about 3%.
3-4%. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, yeah. So it's the difference between being, a multi-millionaire and going broke, these tiny little slivers of edge. And I don't know if the government realizes what they're doing. They may not have realized it.
They obviously don't.
I think it's pretty obvious they don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the words that have come out, a lot of the people who voted for the bill didn't know it was in there at all. So
well, that was like what happened when online got shut down.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, got snuck in, right? I don't think people even realized it was in there.
And they just pulled the plug.
Yep.
They pulled the plug. And I say in the article, it's not only beating the game, there's everything else. It's like getting tossed from the casino if you're playing in the pit. It's like dealing with cheaters, card dumpers, all kinds of stuff, like what happened to that millionaire maker.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're dealing with all kinds of stuff that isn't just beating the game. There's more. And to then lose, being able to deduct your losses, it's really, really cruel.
Yeah, now you can't pay taxes. On top of all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really bad. And you know what? I have a feeling it's not going to get, I hate to say it, I don't know that it'll get rescinded. I think once these things get put in, I think overturning it is really, really hard.
It could take years.
It's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And the problem is it doesn't seem like the broader public has very much sympathy for the gambler.
Oh, yeah.
So.
They don't get it. And they don't get what 10% means.
Right.
That's the weird thing. I think they don't understand the math. They say, oh, yeah, so 10%, who cares?
Right.
But
the comments are crazy.
That's the way to put it. It's everything.
Yeah.
So all your guests must be very upset about it all.
It's big news in our world right now. It's the biggest topic that we hear about.
Yep.
So. All right, let's wrap up here. We are Gambling with Good JuJu. Which of the individuals would you say that you interviewed in this book had the best juju? Maybe a little bit of luck, but their luck is in large part driven by personality factors that enable them to get more than you might expect out of their edges.
That's a good question. Like somebody who had a little bit of who got lucky as well, right? Who seemed like they would get lucky.
Little flair to it, a little something that seems to be outside of the.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm biased because my Kelly's Son story is optioned for a movie, but I would say Kelly's Son and Don Johnson. I mean, not to keep referencing Don Johnson, but I would say Kelly and Don. Say Kelly, Don, and Billy Baxter were people who had that juju, and they, Billy Baxter knew how to win since he was a little kid. He goes, when I was a little boy, when I was 6 years old, no boys' marbles in my neighborhood were safe. So he knew how to win from being a little kid. And when you see him, he's such a great guy. I mean, he dresses great. He's got a great demeanor about him. He's got that great Southern accent. He just, he's always on top of the world. I would say Bill, now that we're talking about it, I guess I would say Billy Baxter. Is the guy that, listen, and he got in trouble for his great story is he got in trouble for sports betting, bookmaking. Yeah. And he knew he was going to go to jail, and he went to a jail down south, and because he was, doing it in Georgia, and he had to do time, and sucked. And he knew after he got out, he was going to move to Vegas and be able to do it all legally and do whatever, do his thing. And his great story is before he left, he made a weight bet with like Doyle, Jack Binion, Chip Reese. And he says, the day he got out, he immediately goes to the horseshoe to get him on the meat scale. And, when he was talking to me, he goes, Billy Baxter, standing, it just was great how he did it. He won the bet. And then, because from that moment on, everything in Vegas was great. He's had the greatest life in Vegas.
I don't know much about Billy Baxter, so we're going to have to look into him a little bit.
You got to read that. You would love that chapter. Seriously.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right. Last question before we let you go here. Any advice for casual casino gamblers such as ourselves to help give us even a small edge in the casino?
Listen, if you're going to play blackjack, play perfect basic strategy and go for all the comps you could get. If you're going to play craps, I don't know, make a pass line bet and take maximum odds. You're playing pretty close to even an even money game at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, like, don't try to do all the splashiest, most fun things, and just try to do the right things and take advantage of all the comps you can get. Take advantage of whatever rebates you can get. I mean, you know, if you're playing craps and you're doing, you know, you're making a pass line bet and taking odds, and you're gambling high enough to get a rebate, I think you basically can play at an advantage doing that. And I would say do what you could do to get over on the casino without getting thrown out. I mean, there's a James Grosjean book that was published by Huntington Press, which is my publisher, which gives the basic strategies for all what he calls carnival games, the kind of sucker games like three-card poker, Mississippi Stud. And there is a basic strategy for all of those games. And so if you're going to play it, why not learn the basic strategy and lose as little possible, have fun, and get some comps, get a free dinner.
I love it.
After 2.5 years of this show, we still need that drilled into our heads. Like we still struggle sometimes there, Michael.
It's too much fun to just gamble.
It is
fun.
The endorphins get going.
It's funny, when I was card counting, I remember I was playing with a friend of mine, and he got annoyed because he'd be playing, and I would just wait till the count got good, and then I would jump in. He goes, "I'm kind of like your stooge here." I go, "Yeah, a little bit."
Yep.
And he goes, "But I'm having fun, and you're working." I'm like, "Well, okay,
right." Yeah,
that's a great quote.
Yeah,
that's a great quote.
That's awesome,
Michael. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had a blast talking with you.
A blast. I had a really, really good time. Thank you.
Good. That'll wrap things up for us this week, folks. Thank you so much to Michael Kaplan for taking the time to talk with us. You can find his book Advantage Players on Amazon, both in physical and audio format. Juice and I will be back in 2 weeks as I'm off on vacation next week. Good juju to your bets, everyone. We'll talk again soon.
So I wanted to bring it up at the interview. Like, I'd love to know more about the Blackjack ball, but I think they did move it so it's the same time frame as Bet Bash, right?
It happened last year. They had it right after Bet Bash. I think. When is Bet Bash?
August
12th to the 14th, 12th to 15th. 12th.
I don't know that it is. I think for some reason they want to have it coincide with Halloween. I think my wife is having a Halloween party. So I probably can't go this year, which is unfortunate because I love going.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my funny Blackjack ball story.
Yeah, please do.
The first couple times I went, because one of the things they do, there's like a written quiz. Do you know about this? They do a written quiz. Like, because there's like a contest where, you become, I guess, player of the year if you win this thing. And you get a giant bottle of champagne from Don Johnson. And but there's a written test first. And, the top 5 finishers on the written test go up on stage and they've got to do, like, counting or memorizing cards or, weird, mental feats.
Yeah, I've heard about that part. Yeah.
And so the first 2 times I played, I finished I was dead last in the written test. And the way the written test works is you do it and you hand it to somebody else. So, like, somebody else is scoring your test and they go, "Okay, who got 20 wrong?" That guy raises his hand and goes, "That's Michael Kaplan." I'm like, "Oh, man." I hear somebody go, "This guy's supposed to be some big gambling writer?"
Oh, man.
But then the last 2 times I went to the last 2 blackjack balls. I made the final table. I was up on stage playing, yeah. So it actually it was pretty gratifying to have gone. And I didn't win, but that was okay. Just getting to the final table was enough.